God has provided everything for me, so I'm not in need of anything. So I say, folks, always go back and remember where you're coming from. Remember where you're at.
The stories you're about to hear were captured in various locations. They were told by the people, and they are for the people. This is a podcast where memories of love, sadness, and those joy-filled moments are celebrated. The community is the essence of our existence, and I wish to connect us all through our unique stories. Welcome to Stories of Many. Hope you enjoy.
Okay, this story is about remembering. I think it's very important in our lives that we remember where we come from and what's happened to us. So my memory is about my childhood, growing up in Birmingham as a youngster. I grew up amongst all adults. So I remember going out and being in the house, or they'll have a little party and I'll be the only child there. I also remembered my mom being ill in hospital. And in those days, children weren't allowed to go. But I remember traveling with my dad, because I was like 11, traveling with my dad to the hospital. I enjoyed the travel because it was a long way out of the city of Birmingham and the country area. So it was so beautiful going down. And it's like, I could only go at the weekend. So it'd be a Sunday, we'd go down. And I would have to wait in the waiting room. But I remember waiting there for my dad to come back and wondering what was happening down the ward and, you know, what was happening to my mom. What would they talk about? Could she talk? Because, as I said, in those days, we weren't allowed as children to visit very sick people in hospital. I also remembered coming back, which is the highlight of my memory coming back. I'd stop off in Birmingham City and I would get a Wimpy and a Knickerbocker Glory. Those were the things we had in those days when I was young. So I remember coming back. I remembered when we moved home a lot, because in those days, people didn't like children in their property. So I remember moving home quite a lot. I moved to Edgbaston, the cricket ground of the famous cricket ground, near the famous cricket ground. I moved there. And my dad also took me to watch the cricket, the West Indies playing England, which was a highlight as well. Although I wasn't really interested in cricket, but it was the going out. Because I remember I love going out and I love being taken out because my dad always takes me out when I was young. I also remembered when we moved to Derby and where we lived, because Dad couldn't buy a property in Birmingham, so he decided to buy one in Derby. So we moved to Derby. So I remember moving there. Not knowing anyone up there because all the family and friends were back in Birmingham, or associates from the same village as my dad grew up. So when I moved to Derby, I remember starting my school and thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen here? I've got to make new friends. However, I remember making a new friend and we used to walk home together. I remember standing by her gate and talking with her until it was time for me to run home, change my clothes, sit down as if I was there all that time from school. And that's before my parents come home, my dad come home from work. So I remembered when we got our first house and we moved in, I remembered having my own bedroom. I got the back room. So that was another highlight of my memory. I remember as I was growing up, leaving school, going on to college, and I remember studying. When I left school, I remembered one day I was all grown up. I was 16. I was an adult, I thought. So I went to the doctors. I remember that he said to me, do I want a note for school? And I thought, how dare he say that to me? I'm an adult now. I was wearing a green coat, which is called an anorak in those days. That was my school jacket that I wore. And I never wore it again because I felt like he thought I was a child and I wasn't. So I remember when I left school, I went to join the Navy. So I which is called the Wrens for the girls when they joined. I went down to the offices and they did everything, tested everything. However, I couldn't join because I was only 4'11" and I was too short. So I was sent away and was told when I've grown a little bit, at least near 5 foot, I could come back. But I remember not going back because then my idea, I wanted to be a stewardess on the aeroplane. But coming from like a country village and being a woman, a girl of color, that's like something out of our reach because they tell you, oh, you can't do that. You're not able to do that. So I decided to do catering instead. So I remember starting my catering college. I remember enjoying that so much. I remember it was apprenticeship. So I remember all my partners that I work with in college. But I also remembered when I failed my first exam because the pass mark was 90% or 99%. So it was really high. And I remember my dad encouraging me and saying to take it again. So I did. I took it again and I passed. And I remember turning up on my first day at my apprenticeship and they played a trick on me. I'll never forget that one. They told me to go in the fridge and bring a stand and wait. And it sounded like something, but it wasn't. It was you need to stand and wait. So it was a joke. So I went in there and I was standing up looking. And one of the ladies came in, what are you looking for, Marva? And I said, they told me to come and get a stand and wait. And they started laughing and I realized they played a joke on me. So I remember that. It wasn't funny at the time, but afterwards I thought it was funny. So I remember passing everything, then became fully qualified as a chef and started my work. My job was very early in the morning when I'm on breakfast. So I'd leave the house at 5 o'clock. And I remember running down the road all by myself because it's quiet to get to work for 6 o'clock because we have to start for breakfast. And I remember as I was growing up, I left Derby and came to London, and I knew London very well because I'm always riding on the tube. That was another highlight of my memory, going around London on the tube, knowing everywhere in London, so I'm quite familiar with it. And as I say, it's good to remember what happens to you in your life. I remembered when I got married and moved to London and set up a new home. But the highlight of everything was growing up and remembering all the great things that happened as I was growing up. So as I was saying, I moved to London. I got married, moved to London. We rented our first property, lived there. At that time, I was the coordinator of a youth group. So I used to leave and go to Croydon to run the group on a Thursday evening. And my husband would do the shopping and the cooking and everything. And I'll tell you a funny thing that happened. My husband's a sleeper. So I remember I didn't have a key at first. I said to him, don't sleep because I'm coming back. So I remember coming back late. Somebody dropped me off, but they didn't leave until the door was open. And I knocked and he didn't open. So I had to follow my friend back to their house and stay the night, which was awful because their dad is a joker. And if he found out that happened to me, he would tell everybody that I know. So in the morning when I got up, I crept out of the house while they were asleep to come back home. And when I knocked the door in the morning, my husband was just putting on his clothes to come and look for me. So he slept right through the night without me being at home. And I thought, what? Are you for real? I forgave him though, because we had just got married. So he's been on his own for a while. So I suppose he's just slept and forgot that I wasn't there. He thought I'd come home and I didn't. So I remembered not carrying on with my catering job because I wanted to do something different. I'm a person that likes to change and do different things. So I decided to work in a company that provide the landing lights for all the airports throughout the world. So I knew airports that people have never heard of throughout the world. So every 6 months, we would print the amber, green and white lights so that the airports could order each time. That was a good memory working there. It was in the city of London, so I would travel down on the tube every morning to work and come back. Obviously, I didn't have any children then, so it was good just coming back and just relaxing when I come back home. I remembered also having my first child. That was an experience. Yes, it was a good one. Traumatic to have in pregnancy, but a good, well, sort of labor. And I remember when we bought our first home. So I bought my first home before I was 30, which was good. And we moved down to our first property that we bought. And I decided not to carry on with the job because it was the city and I didn't want to leave my son. So I stayed at home and brought my son up. But I did little jobs in between. So I worked for the solicitors as a receptionist, telephonist, they called them in those days. So I answered the phone because they said I've got a good telephone voice. So I did answer the phone. And I remember also moving to my second property with 2 children at that time. And at my second property, I remember starting training to be a nurse. Not that was in my mind to be a nurse, but it was something I thought that would be a good career for me to do next. I thought it'd be easier than catering, but it was just as hard or even harder because of the long hours and standing on your feet all the time. But I thoroughly enjoyed my university. I remember doing my access course, I remember going to university, which I enjoyed. I also remember my first day on the ward when I qualified, how scared I was because I thought, oh, I'm going to look after patients. I've got people's lives in my hand and how am I going to do this? Will I remember what to do to give them medication, not to give them medication? However, I did manage. I had a very good mentor. And so because my mentor was really supportive, I was able to overcome all my fears and able to, at the end of everything, I became the sister on the ward. I also became a practice educator who taught the doctors, nurses and students because I was a gastro specialist nurse. So there was things that I need to teach them that they didn't know. So that was good for me. I also remember the day when I needed to leave work because my husband became ill and I became a carer. I wasn't unhappy leaving because I'm one of these persons that if it's something I have to do, I just get on with it because the more you resist is the harder it becomes and life just becomes so difficult. So why not just make up your mind and do what you need to do? So that's what I did. Now I'm saying all this to say it's good to remember. Now I'm an older person. I've got grandchildren and very happy 4 beautiful girls I've got. And I'm very happy and contented person now, even though my life is quite stressful where I'm caring for my husband, but I'm really enjoying my life now because God has provided everything for me. So I'm not in need of anything. So I say, folks, always go back and remember where you're coming from. Remember where you're at.
That was Marva's story on remembrance. Marva is a retired pediatrician. She spends most of her time caring for people now. She volunteers at her local food bank and is dedicated to the ladies at a hostel for women. In her spare time, she loves to garden. The worms scare her at times, but she perseveres nonetheless. She also has a passion for cooking and is creating her own cookbook, one that I will definitely buy. Memories are an important fuel that carries us through life. Our mind often tricks us into remembering only the worst from the past. But it's those moments of happiness, joy, and pleasure that keeps us going. What has been your greatest memory throughout your life? And in what way has it shaped you as a person today? Marva was reluctant to tell her story at first, but after she told it, she was excited to tell more. So here is a moment that made her laugh.
Right, this is a story about when I was a young adult. I grew up in a country area in Derbyshire and I came to London. I'm one of these people that don't like to have the same things as anyone else. It's a funny story, by the way. So when I was growing up, it's like one time the fashion had changed to long coats and long skirts. So I had a long coat, a brown one, with a suede bit in the middle. So I put on my coat, went into, I think I was in London, going down one of these department stores. and which had a huge mirror at the end. And I was at the top of the escalator, and I view the coat in the mirror coming down, and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, somebody's got the same coat as me, and I hate that. I need to change this coat now. And as I was coming down, I was thinking, how dare they? I can't wear this coat anymore, because I don't like to wear anything that anyone else has out there. So as I was coming down and got closer, I realized that it was me that that was in the mirror. I felt so silly. I'm so glad I was on my own anyway, so I could laugh at myself. And that's my funny story.
Do you have a story to share? Have you been positively impacted by any of our stories and would love to share your own? Give us a shout out and let us know through our Instagram page, Stories of Many. Or if you would like your message to be featured on our show, why not click the link in the bio and we will be in touch. Hurry while there is still spaces. Have a wonderful week and keep on inspiring.